how do we go about forgiving wrongs experienced from an institution? And this came in several times this week. People who were saying, I was hurt by, and they would list an organization or a collection of people, an institution. And that may be some of your stories. So they couldn't pinpoint a person. And they were curious, how do we go about either forgiving forgiving those wrongs done to us by like a collection or an institution or organization?
In my opinion, it always comes back to an individual or a group of individuals. I don't think, the church, let's say, First Family Church is not an institution without the people, right? It doesn't exist. So you have to get back to the root of what was the issue. What were the things that were said, that were done? What caused the issue? Who was a part of that? And kind of dive through that. Sometimes, I don't want to say we use the institutional thought as an excuse, but I think that can be a little bit of I don't have to get to the root of the issue through that. So I would say if you're really focused on the institution that wronged you, you probably need to dive a little bit deeper and say, what is the root of my anger, my hurt, my frustration? Who's a source in that institution that's causing that?
What if the source is a policy per se, and then someone just had to kind of enforce or enact that policy, but you feel like, man, I'm on the bad end of that policy now, and I'm upset about that, or I feel hurt by that. What if it's a policy that someone just kind of enforcing? Ed, the mic's closest to your mouth. We'll start with you.
Okay. Yeah, I think the biblical principle or concept of forgiveness is in play for us regardless of who or what has offended us. In the case of a policy, let's just take, for instance, one that was mentioned in last Sunday's message of when church discipline has to be exercised. There are times when people are going to take offense at that, but you have done the right thing, but they are offended by it. And in that case, you're dealing with a whole different thing, and they are going to have to deal with whether they can come to a point of either understanding why it had to be done and being able to work past it, or forgiving if they really think that they have been done through the exercise of some policy. But I agree with Dave that almost always the point of offense is going to be connected to a person within the institution. We can feel that way, and we're going to have to deal with all the feelings and things that we have, not just toward an institution, but toward that particular leader or whomever. And I would say, as we've referenced in one of the other answers to question, that this is one of those points at which Satan really tries to make hay in our lives. If he can get us to feel that we have been offended by any church or institution, we no longer like the Lord's church. And or they hurt you, they wronged you. And it might have been when you were a child, it might have been as a young adult, any point in your life, might be a current situation. Don't allow the evil one to take offense, cause you to take offense at something that someone or some institution has done, and have you turn your backs on the Lord and walk away from finding the place where you can serve Him.
Maybe too often we assume that forgiveness means agreement. And I know personally, there are times that I've been forgiven, and the person didn't agree, but they were just very Christian and cordial and nice. And I don't agree, but I'm not going to let that be a hurt. And there have been times I've forgiven a group, let's say, like, I don't agree with that, but it's not my decision. And so there's nothing, we're not holding anything against each other. I don't agree, but there's nothing residual from that. Does that make sense? So don't think that forgiveness, at least I don't think forgiveness is tantamount to agreement. That allows you to a group then, or to a collection of people, like Dave said, you have some names, you can just say, you know what, I'm not going to hold anything. I don't agree, but man, nothing residual from this point forward. That's helped me personally.
I was also thinking that hardly anything in life is unidimensional. So forgiveness oftentimes involves other aspects or categories that are biblical. One of them, of course, we've talked about it already, is love your enemy. So, even though we're talking about institution, you said oftentimes it lands on a leader or a leadership team or, somebody. The other dimension, or the other category that I think needs to be in place is forbearance. In other words, as believers, we are also commanded to forbear, to just bear things, because we expect justice to take place, but for us as believers, Christ has taken care of that, and so we must release it and forbear, even if it's unjust, but we leave it to the Lord and we trust in Him that His dying on the cross will cover it.